welcome back to What's Stranger Than Strange. My name is Erin. Today's episode is going to be another personal story time. This story was one that I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to share it with people, just because it does involve themes of, death, passing away, things of that sort. It also is a testimony to God's love for us. And I was hoping that by me sharing this story, it will help other people when they're going through personal tragedy in their life. For those of you that have been following my channel since I originally started a little over a year ago, I do reference my grandfather in my first video, just talking about the ways that he influenced my life and, of course, his family and children and things like that. He was a very, very good man. And growing up, he was a father figure for me. And at this point, it would be a little over 6 years ago, he unfortunately had passed. He had been dealing with complications with Alzheimer's and dementia. Sorry. Okay, so we're gonna get it together. No more ugly cries. No more. I promised I was not gonna do this, and it happened anyway. Anyway. So, okay. Get it together. So, he was dealing with, those particular things. And during that time, my sister and my mother were caring for him. And he was always in good hands with them. And as I would get time between work and school, I would go and visit him. And at that time, I was working at a clinic that was really close by the hospital where he was. So in the mornings before I would go into work, I would go up and I would spend time with him. And then at lunchtime, I would come up and I would try to eat my lunch at the hospital with him. And then in the evenings, before I would go home, I would go up and I'd visit him. Even if he wasn't, responsive at that time, it was just a comfort to me to at least be able to go check on him. And, and I was hoping that he noticed that I was there. Okay, so fast forward. He had been in the hospital a couple times, just due to just some complications and stuff with his health, as sometimes happens with, older individuals. And when it finally got to the point that, he ended up in hospice, we would all, of course, spend time up there. However, when it finally got to the day that he left us, it was a group of us that was visiting in his room, and it had been very taxing on all of us. But at that time, whenever the thought would cross my mind, I would always ask God. I'd be like, God, no matter what happens, like whenever you decide that it's his time, please do not let him pass alone. Let there be someone here when it's time. Because, each one of us, was trying to be there, but it just gets so, when you have somebody that is close to you that's passing away, it just becomes so emotionally taxing, physically taxing, because, you're trying to function in your everyday, but then it's just always in the background, like, oh, this is going on. It wears on you. My sister and I were having a conversation, and in his room, letting him hear us just talking back and forth, but trying not to be like super sad in the way that we spoke. And still throughout the whole process, like as I kind of watched him, I kept asking that, God, please don't let him pass without anybody here. We all ended up having to go for just a short period of time so that we could all recuperate, get cleaned up, and I was going to come right back to the hospital. We had said something to him. We said, Grandpa, we didn't really didn't want to leave, but we just had to go temporarily so we could get some of the family members home really quick, run home, take a shower, and come back and sit with him the rest of the evening. Well, during that whole time, I kept saying, God, like, no matter what happens, whenever you decide that it's his time, please do not let him pass without someone here. And I was planning on being back within the hour. And it still makes me really sad because it's like, I wanted to be there when something like that happened, because he was always there for us. And I felt like the easiest thing for me to do was just say, God, you go ahead and step in this instance, because you're going to be able to take better care of him. You're always going to be able to take better care of your children. And so I literally went home for just a short period of time. And as we were walking down the main lobby of the hospital, it was a handful of us from the family. Just in passing, there was like another gentleman that went through, and I like vaguely remembered seeing him. But it was a guy. It was a man that was dressed in like a black coat, because it was really cold. It was a bad snowstorm. We all, said hi to each other, and we kept on going. I get cleaned up, start getting dressed, and getting ready to go back into the hospital. And my husband came in, and mind you, again, in like even getting cleaned up in the shower, I said that same prayer that I always say. So my husband comes in as I'm like coming out to like put my shoes on. Hey, he just passed. I just got a phone call. And when I tell you, like, I was devastated. Because in my mind, I was so heartbroken, because I literally was just like, I just went home to take a shower. And all in that amount of time, it happened. And my mom said something that was a little surprising to me when I was talking to her on the phone. She said that the hospital said that there was someone up there that had the same last name as my grandfather, but it was somebody whose name like we did not recognize. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, who is that? So I immediately go into a panic and I fly up to the hospital, like, because I was already at that point. I was going to be coming back. I get up there and we go into the room, and at that time, the nurse was like, "Oh yeah, there's someone's still here," and we're all like looking to try to see if we can figure out who this person was. And we get into the room, and there sure enough was a gentleman in there that introduced himself, and I was trying very hard to pay attention to what he was saying, but I was so overwhelmed with just shock at what I saw when I went in, because up until that point, I had always been spared from seeing a loved one pass, like at least being old enough to recognize what was going on. And he told us the story about everything that had happened. And he said, "Yeah, I remembered seeing you guys when you left, when you were leaving, because we had to go again drop off family and stuff like that. Like, I remember seeing a group of you guys all heading out, and he said, I saw you come when I was coming in, and I remembered seeing that person that we said hello to. It was him." So what's even crazier about the story is that growing up at my great grandma's house, I always saw a series of pictures that would be on her refrigerator that were of this man, his wife, and his children. And it would always change, like certain times of the year, like they would have like a newer picture of the same family. And I was always like, who is that? Like, who is that? Like, growing up, I never personally had met these people. Well, as he was going and explaining like how he was linked to the family, it finally clicked in my head. He is the same gentleman from the pictures that I saw growing up that I had never met. He is a family member that is a missionary that my entire life had been overseas doing missionary work. And up until that point, I had never ever met this person that I could recall. And he said that he noticed while he was there that everything kind of started to decline very rapidly. And he said that he was able to recognize what was going on. And in that moment, he said that he felt like he was probably ready, because maybe he was hanging on because he didn't want all of us to see him go through that. And my grandma said the same thing. My grandma was like, sometimes people will hang on until they know that you're out of the room, because they don't want you to see that. What was amazing to me though was that my family member was able to recognize what was going on, because he said that out in his field, wherever he was doing missionary work, he was used to doing, I guess maybe like final rites and things like that for people that were being called home. That's how I'll say it. And it was amazing to me, though, that God did answer my prayer, and he actually brought my family member in during like a really bad storm that works in ministry to help facilitate that transition. I am still a little heartbroken over the way that it happened, but I know that he did answer my prayer, because I was always afraid anytime that I left, whether it was like, other times that he had been in the hospital. I was always afraid, like, when I leave, is it gonna happen, And so that's why I started asking for that. And I'd never ever met him before, but when it finally all clicked, I mean, I was already crying, but it made me cry even more. Because God did answer my prayer. Because he knew at that moment, like, I needed a break. I couldn't, like, we needed a break. We had to take people home. Everybody was just emotionally just worn down. And we felt at that moment like that he was pretty stable, and I'd be back within the hour. But God still did come through. He literally answered my prayer. And what was wild was it took my family member most of the day to travel to get there because of how bad the storm was. So like while we were, up there, he was already on his way. It was just crazy. And the gentleman ended up being, again, like I said, that family member that was a missionary, but he was my, he was basically my grandfather's nephew. And he was there to help him in his final moments. So the moral of the story is, if you don't believe that prayer works, I am telling you that it does. Even if you don't feel like the answer is coming the way that you want it to, or not coming as quickly as you want it to, God does hear, he does hear your prayers. Okay, now that I'm done ugly crying, I just thought that, I guess I didn't get to the point that I ugly cried, but now that I'm done, I just wanted to share that story with you all, because I'm hoping that will help someone else that is, going through like a similar thing, or just in general. Just like if you have something that you're praying about, ask God for it. Because even if you feel like you're alone, you're not. He always hears you. And I am still working on other content. I just thought that it was time for me to share this story. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until we meet again, everybody take care. Bye-bye.